The very senior CIA officer who handled Uri Gellar's case was Dr. Kit Green.
One afternoon, I got a telephone call on my desk in the headquarters building. And the phone call initially was on what we call the red line. It was a classified line. It was an intelligence agency of a very powerful ally of the United States of America. And they were troubled because a member of their military, an enlisted man, who was doing things for them that they couldn't understand, that appeared to have an electromagnetic aspect, that he was capable of altering highly sophisticated electronics, which included imaging electronics, at will. And they didn't know how he was doing it. At the time, I had a position of leadership in the division that was responsible for life sciences, biological and chemical warfare. So I got the first call, and the question was simply, can you help us? And my response initially was, of course, I'll be glad to try. I was very interested as an electrophysiologist or neurophysiologist, not as a physician initially. And that was what I was initially asked about. The word psychic didn't appear for a long time with Gellar.
SRI's investigation of Uri Gellar was initially all about testing his electromagnetics, nothing to do with psychic remote viewing. But his arrival at SRI soon changed the entire dynamic for Targ and Puthoff and their secret CIA contract monitor, Kit Green.
In a very short period of time, a week or 10 days, I got a phone call at headquarters. It was the chief scientist of the laboratory at Stanford Research Institute, and he was talking about other aspects of Uri Gellar's capabilities. And I, of course, said, well, what other kinds of things are you talking about? And without much of a pause, the scientist said, well, he says he can see things at a distance. And I said, no, he can't. And they said, yes, he can. I said, no, he can't. And they said, well, he's right here. Say hi to Uri Gellar. I said, hi, Uri. And a voice in the background said, hi, Kit. And I said, well, what can you see?
Now, this wasn't on Skype, was it?
No. I was on a telephone, a black. I mean, this is early 70s, before Skype and before cell phones and all that.
He said, okay, I'm sitting at my desk at CIA at Langley, Virginia. I will put something on my desk and let's see if Uri can get it. So we didn't tell Uri what this was all about. We couldn't admit to him that we're working with CIA. We just said we had a scientific colleague on the East Coast, and we'd like to see if this remote viewing that you do, which typically we've been doing locally, works over long distance. And he's going to put something on his desk, like for you to describe it.
I turned, just as I will do now, and I picked up a book, which is the same book that I had on my desk at the time of this phone call many, many years ago. This book is a collection of medical illustrations of the nervous system. And I had it on my desk at the headquarters building because I was using it for part of my work. And I opened it up to a page, and I just stared at it. And he said, well, seeing something kind of strange.
So he sat there and he scribbled on paper and crumpled up and threw it away, scribbled some more, threw it away. Finally scribbled something down and says, well, I don't know what to think. It looks like I have made a drawing of a pan of scrambled eggs. And yet I have the word architecture coming in strong. So what he handed us was a sheet of paper that had this scrambled eggs look and the word architecture written across the top.
I later got a copy of that drawing, and I was astonished to find that what he had drawn maybe does look like scrambled eggs, but it was a cross-section of the human brain, a sagittal section from the side of the human brain. But the thing that caught my attention was he had written across the top of his drawing the word architecture. Architecture, I had written in my handwriting the word architecture of viral infection. I was looking at the biological warfare effect on the nervous system of a threat virus. And I'd written on my notes, book, architecture of a viral infection.
We then, or he then, they did tremendous analysis to see is there any chance that there were any cues over the telephone lines and so on. That was a genuine result. And there were others like that we did that we've never published, but certainly convinced us that he has ability.
Why didn't you publish things like that? Is it because that wasn't replicable?
Well, at the time, it was just kind of a one-off thing, but it was primarily because of direct CIA involvement, and that couldn't be admitted till 1995.
So what did you do next?
Well, I went and authorized the expenditure of sufficient funds to ask the people doing the research to expand the experimentation under the construct of remote viewing.
This film describes a 5-week investigation conducted at Stanford Research Institute with Uri Gellar. 15 drawings were placed in double-sealed envelopes in a safe for which none of the experimenters had the combination. This is Gellar's representation of what he believed was sealed in the envelope. At no time during these experiments did he have any advanced knowledge of the target material. In fact, this is the most off-target of the drawings that he did. Here, the experiment is repeated, this time with Puthoff as a sender, just to check that the identity of the sender is of no significance in the experiment. This is a drawing that Gellar has made to correspond to the target object. The rectangle on the clipboard represents the TV screen in Gellar's mind on which he claims to project the image he is trying to draw. As you can see, he is quite elated about getting the right answer. Here in the laboratory notebook, on the left side of the page, you see the original targets, and on the right, Gellar's responses. This is not a collection of correct answers out of a long series of correct and incorrect responses. This is actually the total run of pictures in a series. It is interesting that there is often a mirror symmetry. This type of communication experiment was repeated many other times during the 5 weeks, with Gellar choosing to pass about 20% of the time. In this particular case, the target is a 3/4-inch steel ball. Gellar's task now is to determine which of these 10 cans holds the steel ball bearing. The experimental protocol is for the experimenter to remove the cans one at a time in response to Gellar's instructions as he points or calls out a can top number. He has made his choice. The steel ball is found. We are repeating the experiment with a different target object. One of these cans is filled with room temperature water. He is asked to make his choice both by writing the number down as well as making a selection by hand. Having made the selection, now looks to see whether water is inside the can. He now waters the plant by the contents of the can. We repeated this type of experiment 14 times. The target was water, a steel ball bearing, a small permanent magnet, paper-wrapped ball bearing, and the sugar cube. The latter 2 targets were not located. On the other 12 targets, he did make a guess and was correct in every instance. The whole array of this run had an a priori probability of 1,000,000,000 to 1. Here's another double-blind experiment in which a die is placed in a metal box. This is a live experiment that you see. The box is shaken up. In this case, Gellar guessed that a 4 was showing. You will note that he was correct, and he was quite pleased to have guessed correctly. Out of 10 tries in which he passed twice and guessed 8 times, the 8 guesses were correct. and that gave us a probability of about 1 in a million. We would point out again there were no errors in the times he made a guess.
Now, behind the scenes, of course, we were approached by Israeli intelligence, and they had been working with Gellar in Israel, but they had only been doing operational things. They had not had any chance to do anything scientific, and so they asked us if we would be willing to, share with them whatever we found out in a scientific venue. Well, that wasn't my call. So that was up to the CIA if they wanted to do that. But